the abstraction or where that came from, and that is net demand and time liabilities. Before we go further, I'm gonna come to old principles of banking or any balance sheet, and that's assets and liabilities. Assets are appreciative instruments and liabilities are depreciative instruments in value. Now, jumping on business of banking, when a deposit holder is trying to deposit his money or majority of his money in the commercial bank, he's expecting a good rate of return on his investment, whether it's in savings account or any other instrument like FDs, RDs, anything. His perspective is going like, I'm gonna get appreciated over time. But from the bank's perspective, it's a liability, because banks have to pay for his investment in their platform. Or in simple words, bank has to pay interest on his investment in their bank, and that usually becomes a liability. Now, talking about assets, now we have already mentioned way before that banks usually accumulate their assets and they earn revenues from loans, advances, and that is a primary source for banks to accumulate their assets and become bigger than they were before. Now, talking about loans, there are mostly two types of liabilities that are commonly heard among all the people, and there are time liabilities and demand liabilities. Now, demand liabilities are instruments which are payable on demand by the banks. Let's take, for example, if I'm a depositor, I have deposited some money in the bank, I want to access my funds and I want to withdraw all my funds. Now, banks won't stop me unless there is a liquidity problem in the bank, but otherwise banks will not be able to stop me. And the best examples for demand liabilities are savings account, current account, bank guarantees, margin against bank guarantees, lines of credit. Now, talking about net demand and time liabilities, that's depreciative instruments in the balance sheet of banks, which has to be returned back after a specific time period. Now, let's take for instance, I have processed a FD in the commercial bank, and that tenure can be lasting as 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or even 10 years. But I can't touch money before the maturity. If I touch the money before the maturity, I have to pay a penalty. And same goes for public provident fund, which can be lasting as 15 years with 5-year lockup. And these type of time liabilities can be little bit relief for commercial banks, because they don't have to pay interest regularly. They just have to pay money at a specific time period. And remember one thing clearly, that when anyone or you are talking about deposits, when you're talking about deposits from the bank's perspective, it's a liability. From your perspective, it's an asset. And there's also a big liability or deposits, you can say, from the bank's perspective. There's a big deposit when a bank is depositing their money in another bank. And when we consider this whole net demand and time liabilities, the formula is pretty simple. It's demand liabilities plus time liabilities plus all other liabilities minus interbank deposits, which I already discussed, that banks are having deposits in other banks. That's the formula. Now, as we know that banks are conducting their operations day to day, so there are sudden increase in withdrawals plus there are sudden increase in deposits. So these type of figures, I mean the assets and liabilities, are fluctuating regularly. So after every 2 weeks, bank is mandated to calculate the Ndtls in order for them to know the liquidity status of their bank. So I hope you understand what is Ndtls, net demand and time liabilities. So I'm going to take a break, but I'll be coming up with a new video that's going to always refresh your mind with finance. Till then, stay safe. God bless.